Hello, everybody, and welcome to OuiTalkRaw. I am Jennifer Busco, your host today, and we have a very special day today. So our other host, Greasy Keys, has a rock star wife. You think Greasy Keys is the rock star? Well, check out this episode. Miss Rachelle Atkins, welcome.
Thank you.
Greasy.
How's it going, everybody? Well, hey, I just want to say thank you so much for the rBeatz fam and everyone for having Rachelle on. You guys are in for a real treat today with this podcast. She has an incredible story and an incredible book that's coming out that you'll all want to get a copy of and read. So you guys enjoy the interview, and I'll see you next time. Enjoy.
Thanks, Sonny.
Happiest couple in Charlotte. Am I right? Am I right?
As far as we know.
Well, welcome. I'm so excited to speak with you today. Funny story. I was reading your book at Common Market with my girlfriend, and she literally took a photo of me because I don't read. She was like, "Are you reading a book right now? I have to snap this photo." So that's how good your book is, that you had me intrigued and interested.
That's a big deal. Thank you for telling me.
It was a horrible photo, but yes. So welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thanks.
Your book is titled Sleep Like Starfish. So
Yes.
let's start there with how you got that title.
Okay, so that's a fun story. It was a time in my life where I had a lot of questions, and I ended up seeing a psychic. Ooh, and she made me a believer in those abilities.
Was it here in Charlotte?
It was, yeah. And so basically, she looked at me and she said, "You have dad issues." And I was like, wow, okay. And she gave me this exercise. She told me every day, every morning, and every night that I should lay down on my bed with my arms spread and my legs spread wide, very vulnerable, and say, "My Father loves me," and that was to mean to me that my Heavenly Father and earthly father loved me. And so the first time I did that, I laid in that position, and I was like, "Oh, like a starfish," and I fell asleep that way. And it was a very rare, vulnerable moment for me. And so I referred to it as sleeping like starfish, and that to be a very comfortable and secure position to be in.
I was going to say, did it feel like safer, kind of like a way to feel safe and secure?
Kind of like when a dog feels safe enough to roll on their back, all fours in the air. It's kind of the same thing. It's a very vulnerable position. And so yes, it's a sense of safety in that.
I love
that's where the title, so it became the title of an essay, and that is the title essay of the book.
I love it. And I love what you said about Father and Heavenly Father, because in my field of healing, when you're really, really, really young, your parents sort of do represent God. And so if you have like a broken relationship or a strained relationship with one of your parents, it can actually affect you that deeply, right? Like you feel like you're not connected to God. So it's almost like the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that.
So tell us about you as a person before we get to the nitty gritty.
Okay.
Married to Greasy.
Yeah, so that yes, married to Greasy. We've been married. It'll be 25 years next month. Yep. So we were very young, and we've had a lot of adventures.
She's looking at him, everyone. If you
sorry, we were very young, and we've had a lot of adventures together. There's a lot of that in the book. I work in construction, so I'm lucky to have a job that I love, and writing that I also love. But so I work in custom luxury home building in Charlotte.
So you're empty nesters, right? Or close to it. Is that why the timing of this book
believe so. I believe so. Our kids are 24 and 22, and kind of watching them relearn some behaviors that maybe they learned when they were younger, having real frank conversations about the ways that their childhood, affected them, and recognizing the humanity in that. It seemed like the
Wait,
right...
you're not perfect, Shelley?
No.
Turns out you're not perfect.
Turns out none of us are. And and we're all going to, newsflash, mess up our kids one way or the other. But for me, the time was right because I think my perspective on everything has matured, and my ability to take accountability. When you write memoir, the most important thing is to be the hardest on yourself, because if you're not, then you're not telling a really true story. So,
and before we get into the actual meat and the nitty-gritty of the book, let's talk about the creative process, because we love to talk about creativity, don't we, Greasy?
Absolutely.
Here at rBeatz.com.
Yeah.
So I believe like creativity is an energy that you channel, right? Whether it's music, art, writing. So talk to us about how you sort of prepare and use your body as like that vessel. Even though it is your story, it's still an art, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Right?
No. Oh, absolutely. Well, I think it's important to find a space to be quiet with our thoughts. I think that that's one thing that our lifestyles these days don't really allow naturally, really have to be intentional. And for me, that's meditation and putting down the phone and making that time before I even launch into my day.
So before you get ready to write?
Yes.
Sort of thing?
Oh, yeah. So it really does kind of open the channel, and you can really hear yourself think when you don't have the noise of the world, coming through what everyone else thinks and what you should think and that type of thing. So first thing in the morning is really an ideal time to get quiet, set the tone for your day. And then I always wanted to be one of those writers that was like, I'm just the vessel. It just comes to me, I really, that's not me. But I do know that when I tune in and I am intentional about that space, I can really hear what I'm thinking, and I work that out on the page. So, for me,
how long did it take you from start? Is the book out?
It's out.
It's complete. So
It's
when did
complete.
you start? When did you first pen to paper?
Well, that's a hard one, because some of these essays originated when I went back to school in my late 30s, early 40s. I went to Queens. It was a bucket list for me to get this creative writing degree. And so some of them originated there, but it was 3 years in earnest because it's very different than it began.
So did you just start like at a computer? Day one, I was born in. How does that work? I can't imagine
definitely.
how overwhelming.
No, that's
feels.
a great question, and that is a way to never write a book. Absolutely,
like, that feels like so much work to me.
Absolutely, because we don't really think chronologically that way when we really reflect back on our lives. We think about
so
these
true. The pivotal moments.
pivotal
and the
moments.
things that stand
Yes, that
out.
was
Yes.
exactly the word I was going to use. There is a method that I learned from one of our beloved local authors named Judy Goldman, and took a couple of workshops with her. And one time she said that her process was to write 10 or 12 essays, so you're really drilling down on an event, and you write about that, not really thinking about how do these all go together, but understanding when your train of thought is kind of in a certain direction, whether you're reflecting on, I read a book recently called Wintering, and it was about the winter, it's snow, kind of the processes in our bodies and our minds and what it means, not only with the weather, but how it's affected by us. And so that was a similar thread throughout. So she would take these 10 or 12 stories and kind of lay them all out on the floor in front of her and say, I feel like there's a common thread between all of them. And then or maybe this one doesn't belong, or maybe I need one or two more. And so that's really I think the most effective way to pull together a memoir or a book of essays, because I exclusively write creative nonfiction.
Got it. And so reading it, which I love because the world knows I'm not a reader, it's very easy reading. I love that. Like all of a sudden I'm like, how am I on page 27 already? So, I mean, the way you write is it felt very effortless on my end as a reader. So my question is like, how did you remember all that stuff?
Okay, well, that's a huge compliment first, so thank you. Let me address that, because I never want to be, and I'm just not one of those writers that has a bunch of flowery language or...
You don't, not at all.
I don't
but
want...
I feel like I could like visualize what you looked like, so that's what I think,
Oh, good.
is testament to like a good writer.
Good, I did my job.
I could picture the scenes, and I think we're similar ages.
Yeah.
Like, you were talking about like I don't know, Tom Selleck or something.
Yes, absolutely. Kenny Rogers, all
So
that.
like, oh gosh,
There's a lot of pop
So I
culture
could definitely
in there.
picture a lot of that.
Yeah. So, what was the question?
How did you remember all of that stuff?
Oh,
I don't think
yeah.
I could remember like the intricate details
Sure.
that you.
Sure. Well, spending that quiet time really reflecting. A lot of times I'll do it on a walk. I'll take a walk and I'll see something and it'll remind me, or I'll think back. I'll think back to a situation that I want to write about, something that was pivotal, and I'll remember things that surrounded that that time in my life. Like, what was I watching? Well, I was drinking. What was I drinking out of? And those are the kind of things that I'm able to remember. There's a lot that I forgot too, which is really, it's hard to, the things that we remember are all so different and so individual.
Mm-hmm. Well, it makes sense that you wouldn't write it chronologically if certain things pop into your mind at certain times. You're like, oh, when I was 12, this happened.
Yeah.
I can put that in chapter 3.
Sure. Well, you'll notice like I do jump around a little bit, as far as like I'll skip over certain periods of my life because funny you should say that. There is a chapter in the book called The Lost Year, and it is a year that I don't remember at all. So the memory is funny that way.
Do you have any inkling on why you don't think? Like, do you think
I
there
think
was
it was
some trauma
traumatic.
that you blacked out or blocked out?
Yeah, exactly.
Not drunk.
Right. No.
Blocked out, not blacked
yet.
out.
That was coming. But yeah, no, I think it was just too difficult to remember.
So could you give anyone watching like a snippet of what it's about, and we'll just go from there?
Sure.
It's about you.
Yeah, sure. So the book began because I was feeling really bad in my body. I was feeling physically very, very bad. I had a lot of pain, exhaustion. I was getting sick all the time, had a chronic cough. I could not keep up with my life, and I was just feeling terribly. So
What age we talking here?
Oh my goodness. In my 40s.
Okay.
In my 40s. And, I was at a creative group where we would get together once a month and listen to each other's poems, stories, new songs, visual art, and that type thing. And we would it was a place for us to show it and be vulnerable and talk about where we were mentally and emotionally at the time. And I shared one of my early essays at one of these meetings. And when I got up from that, I realized I was in so much pain. I was in more pain than I was when I got there. And it made me wonder if there wasn't a connection between that painful story that I shared, which had become so like that story again, to me, but then seeing other people's reactions to it really made me realize the impact.
In your body, you felt it physical.
I felt it in my body. And so I just kept thinking on that for the weeks to come, wonder if there was a connection there. And I started down that path of digging into that idea that the body keeps the score.
Yes. I love Bessel van der Kolk. I'm actually trained by him. He's changed my life. So he wrote the book, The Body Keeps the Score, which just saying traumas and emotions are all stuck if we don't process or heal them, right?
Yeah.
And that's really what your book is about, is
Absolutely.
saying what you've been through and then how you approached it with healing and in different ways, right? You did acupuncture.
So many different ways. So, there are the modalities like acupuncture and massage and some functional medicine and that type thing. But then also, cultivating a sense of humor and levity to some of that stuff, because really, it's pretty hard to laugh at some of the painful things in our life when they're happening. But, later on, sometimes you can say, find the funny in the pain, really. The humor can heal, but mostly finding a sense of faith in what you believe in, and for me, it's not a religion. It's a comforting idea of that these things happen. I hate to say for a reason, but we can make reason out of it.
I know it's so hard to say. Well, everything happens for a
does.
reason.
Nobody wants to
but
hear
you can
that.
often look back at a lot of trials and tribulations and see how you've grown, learned from healing or stepping forward.
Yeah, and to see, sometimes things are painful but necessary. and that, no, you don't want to say everything happens for a reason. It's not that, but you can find a reason. You can find a good. You can, even if it's just, I'm a different person now than I was before.
Yeah, and often they say, you can go from having like PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, go through the healing process, and then you step into post-traumatic growth, which is like you're ending higher, right?
Yes.
If there's a scale of human
Right.
life. You're ending at a better place than before the trauma.
Maybe it's the scale of enlightenment or something.
Yeah, I think it's just a growth, involvement.
Evolution. Yeah.
So I think it's great in the book because you do have, because you said, you're like, well, the beginning's really heavy, or it might come off as heavy. There were heavy things, but I do think that you made it relatable, and there was a sense of lightness to it.
Great.
I don't know if that's just your energy that feels a little lighter,
Yeah.
or, and that just came through in the book, but I definitely didn't feel like you were coming from a victim consciousness kind of place, which I think is super evolved and important.
That is a big deal.
For other people to heal and, feel it.
Yeah, and sometimes that victim consciousness doesn't start with us. Sometimes we're born with that.
Let's talk about it, girl.
Okay,
let's talk about ancestral traumas and how things get passed down.
Yes. Okay, so I do know. So my daughter had said to me, I have all these, it's like I have an abandonment issue, but I've never been abandoned. But her mom was, and her grandmother, and her grandfather, and and so I that was really impactful for me, for her to have shared that.
Well, and then you spin off belief systems that are part of that, right? And then you start to believe that you're not enough and you're not lovable.
And then, the behaviors of someone, it's like you can be raised by an alcoholic and have those kind of similar behaviors, but not actually be the alcoholic because you learn those behaviors, whether you have the wound or not.
It's energy and experience, right? So I think kids you can just feel it in the energy if it's not addressed or, beginning to heal.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's important about, our generation right now, right? We're waking up, we're becoming more conscious. So it's sort of like, okay, the buck's going to stop here, hopefully, right?
I hope so.
I know I messed up Oliver, I'm sure, in a lot of his 12 years, but I am trying, right? Doing the work and evolving and growing. So hopefully it won't just keep going with an unaware sense, right? Because that's what we want to do, is be aware of it. I think you said that, like just having the awareness of it is really the first step to understanding that things can shift and change.
Yeah.
And I think it's important too, for anybody watching, that mind, body, emotional connection, and how you had a lot of health issues.
Yeah.
Like, speak to those with how you uncovered that they were related to traumas, unprocessed, or emotions, stored fears.
Yeah.
And by the way, can I say it?
Yes.
Okay. The part of the book where you say you put all the stuffed animals around your bed to feel safe. I'm like, that is so Jenny Busco. Like, I feel like I never, that feeling of safety. Like, that is our primal need. Everybody in this room, right, needs to feel safe in some way, shape, or form. And I really felt when you said you put the little stuffed animals around, I was like, damn, that was a good idea. Why didn't I do that when I was 5? I just had a blanket. I had a blankie.
I had the blankie. I had the army of stuffed animals.
Yeah. So, walk us through the process of how you uncovered that if you'd like to share.
Sure.
Your physical symptoms were related to emotional traumas.
Yeah. So that night at my friend Kelly's house for our monthly creative group was really where my eyes were kind of opened to that. And I went to see an acupuncturist. Acupuncture has been a big part of my healing. And the acupuncturist said to me, You're twitching. I was doing this thing after the treatment, and my right shoulder was twitching. And I said, I don't understand what's happening. Sorry, And he's like, don't be sorry. He said, it's grief. You're releasing grief. And for me at that moment, grief was the loss of a loved one. The grief was not something that I could relate to the stories of my life, right? Because I survived. And my loved ones survived with me, So he said, no, grief, can be different way of processing things that happened to you or didn't happen to you. Things
I find in my clients, they'll sometimes have grief of like disappointment of their life not turning out the way they thought it should be. Even like I'm 50 and I've never been married. That can be grief.
Sure.
You know, not that your mom's dying, but that your life isn't the way you thought it was going to be.
Yeah, and I get that now. But you know, at the time, I thought, well, and I told him a story, and I talk about this in the book, and he said, "Oh, well, that's grief. Your grief is abandonment." And I thought, "Oh,
that is interesting," because you think it would just be unlovable feeling or unworthy feeling,
or a loss, you know, or something like that. And he's like, "Oh, your grief is abandonment." And so what was fascinating to me about that was, well, my body is clearly unwinding, and some of the pain that I carried just felt like constant tension. And I started thinking about how much I'm holding. And then I got a pretty big diagnosis later on. And then at that point, I realized that the idea that trauma is held in the body, in the muscles, in the tissues, in the cells.
In the unconscious, right?
In the unconscious, yeah. And in the way that we view the world. So we're bringing that former grief into our present experiences.
And our kids can feel it. Guess what, America? Yeah. Even if you don't talk about it, they can feel it.
Exactly. Even if you're sweeping it under the rug or shushing about it, you know, it's there. Energetically, it's there. And so the idea that carrying and holding that pain in the body eventually turns into disease, and it's all energy, and it has to have a place to go. And then beginning to work on releasing that from my body physically, and then releasing it from my mind, trying to reframe thoughts that were habitual. You know, the other shoe is going to drop thoughts, intrusive thoughts, and learning to kind of reframe those in my mind started to give me relief in my body. And I think it's important to realize that I know that this is an ongoing process. I by no means have figured it all out, right? but going through this journey and writing this book has gotten me so much further along. And so it's going to be a constant practice, you know, to remind myself, let that go, you're safe, you know, retraining my thoughts and my mind, and continuing to get therapies like acupuncture.
And I love it because I'm in the woo-woo field, right? Yeah. And, you know, constantly seeing things stored in clients, you know, my shoulder hurts, and then we go in there and I feel into it, and there's a stuck or stored emotion or something that happened when they were 4, and then you release it, and it's just that simple. They feel lighter. But I think that like the work, like the energy healing and all that stuff is so woo-woo, but I feel like you're preaching the same thing in this book.
Totally.
But it's just science, like the mind and body and the energies of the mind and body are connected.
Yes, I think some people can really pick up on that from a scientific. I mean, there's plenty of science, right, that we know that supports the body keeps the score.
Right.
But some of us don't need that science. Some of us just have that like you have that intuitive ability to feel that energy and to release it. And it's really not important, the scientific part of it, because you already know,
right. And do you feel healthier now before?
Oh my gosh.
Right? So let's talk about that, like the process of, you know, feeling lighter and feeling like you are releasing or processing or dealing, right? I mean, nobody's, like you said, fully healed. But sometimes, I mean, I always say awareness can move mountains. Like just having the awareness that you're holding a belief in the body or in the unconscious or a stuck or stored fear, trauma in the body. The awareness of it, like your higher self's like, okay, she's onto it. Let's give her opportunities now. Let's open some doors that she can walk through.
Yeah, you know, there was a mountain on my back. That's what it felt like. You know, it felt like I was walking around with a mountain on my back. And actually, through this book and through writing this memoir, it has brought so much healing to my family, to the relationship. I mean,
how just the act of writing, the process of writing is healing. Yes.
Yeah, because well, you know, we talk about all the time, you know, how you might experience a moment will be different than how I experience a moment. And so that's very much true in memoir. The way that I'm going to write it, I'm writing these stories as how they affected me, the way I remember them. And my parents, when they read them, nobody said that's not how I remember it, which was so gracious
That
of
really
them.
is.
I mean, and it was so selfless of them and really speaks to their maturity as well to say, it was my mom and she said, you have my permission. Whatever I can do to help heal my family, I'll do it.
And I'm sure this is a huge catalyst for them to shift a little bit, you know?
I think
'Cause you're
so.
Yeah.
I think so.
Just like you affect your children, you can also affect your parents, even by not consciously
Yes.
having conversations with them, but just because we're energetically connected.
Absolutely. And I think that, my interactions with my parents, particularly my dad, I think I carried that energy with me in our interactions. So even if we weren't talking about how maybe he wasn't there for me at this point or I needed something from him that I didn't get, I was still carrying that. There was a posture in me. And I felt really seen by him when he read this book, and to have him be as proud of me as he is, and same with my mother, I don't have to have that posture anymore. But yeah, it's changed. And then, what it's done is it's prepared me. I keep staring at the book because it's like the only one I've seen, they're all coming in tomorrow. But it's like the energy has moved forward and backward. It's moved backward for generationally for my mom and my dad and me and my stepdad, and then it's moved forward with my children because through their graciousness of blessing this book, they have shown me what I need to do when the time comes when my kids want to have a further reckoning about their childhood,
And they can refer to this like their whole lives if they have questions about you.
Yeah.
Like it's something that they can, right?
It is a history. It is a history. And it does explain me a lot to them, I'm sure. But then it just really, I admired my parents throughout this process so much that I definitely want to mirror that for our kids when they come and they say, you did this and it hurt me, or you had this anxious behavior and then therefore I became anxious about this. And I'm saying, I'm so sorry. How can I help you walk through this?
Refer to the book.
Yeah.
Well, we are going to take a quick break and be right back after these messages.
Upcoming local, national, and international concerts, starting off with Gorilla T, who's performing at Black Box Theater in Charlotte on Saturday, October 26th. Doors open at 10 p.m. Tickets are on sale now at blackboxcharlotte.com. Jelly Roll is rocking and rolling into the Spectrum Center in Charlotte on Sunday, October 27th for his Beautifully Broken tour. Doors open at 7 p.m. You can get your tickets at Ticketmaster.com. Starlight on 22nd Street is hosting its annual singer-songwriter meetup on Wednesday, October 30th at 5:30 p.m. to 7 p.m., along with a variety open mic starting at 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. You can learn more at starlighton22nd.com. This is Annalise Pearl, bringing you all the new details on the latest trending water cooler conversations. Stay on top with the rBeatz app, and rBeatz.com always bring you the best of the best independent, national, and international music artists, concerts, and influences on the rBeatz app. Let's get started with this week's DJ World Beats top trending songs. Spinning now on 25/8/366, our global pop stream, DJ World Beats brings you Fazia with her single Ice, JP Cooper Shining with Diamonds and Gold, RYX with You featuring Hermanos Gutierrez, Morton and Artbat featuring Bond with their single Hallow. Trending now on rBeatz Radio, our house and EDM stream, we have Aaron Hybel, Morning Light, Armin van Buren and Hardwell, Follow the Light, Rufus Du Sol, Break My Love. Spinning now on We Global Radio, our hip-hop and R&B stream, we have The Little Mermaid herself, Hallie with her single, Because I Love You. And then we have Annie Effa featuring Genome and Elena Bubba with Gentle Lover. Closing out on USA Heroes, our classic rock and country station, we have Jesse Murph, Bang Bang, The Ballad of Amy Fisher. That concludes this week's countdown.
Home. It's hard to put into words what home means. Here in Charlotte, home is passion. It's grit and resilience. It's what defines us, and it's who we are. Representing something way bigger than ourselves. We find home in a game. A game from the North and adopted by the South. And for the last 70 years, we've found home in this Coliseum.
franchise history. The Charlotte Checkers are Calder Cup champions.
No matter the moment, no matter the price, the time is now to take care of home.
And we are back on OuiTalkRaw, rBeatz.com. I'm Jennifer Busco. We are here with Rachelle Atkins, an author. Do you love that you can call yourself an author?
I totally do. Yeah.
I'm an author.
I'm an author.
So I loved brushing through this book. I got so much out of it, but I did get a takeaway that I would love for you to read.
Okay.
The takeaway.
So I'll read Jennifer's takeaway. My takeaway from this is that our thoughts, emotions, and fears can't always be trusted. Neither can our long-held beliefs. They need to be re-examined. When we let those restrictions be the guiding force in our lives, perhaps we miss out on a lot. To paraphrase Michael Singer, your great-great-great-grandmother had to meet your great-great-grandfather in order for you to be here today. Every single event that has occurred, both good and bad, had to happen in order for the thing in front of us to happen that we are now judging. So what if we listen to life instead? Why not do what my friend Bob Graham always says when things get tough and just stay in the river, flow with it?
I love it. And I think it's just really speaking to how we are all connected and how like ancestry is so important. But also, if you really boil it down, it's like the traumas, the beliefs that we carry that aren't serving us. It's like just really trying to transform as best we can, like the fear in us to love. And that's how you can like enjoy your life. Like, you know what I mean? Just
I do.
not looking at it through a fear-based lens. And then you're like, then you're in the flow.
Yeah.
So that's why that really, because it's kind of a simple concept.
Yeah, it is. You know, the idea of staying in the river, Bob was explaining to me, came from an occupational therapy study called the Kawa Study. And Kawa means river, where river is a metaphor for well-being. And the river, our well-being, flows along and then occasionally hits the rocks on the side of the bank and comes in contact with obstacles that can disrupt the flow, and that you just have to stay in the river during those times and try not to see things as either necessarily good or bad, but
or just re-examine them, like right? It said, I like that, re-examine. I think self-awareness is such a huge part of this work, like understanding how you're operating and where potentially it's coming from or came from or what needs to be addressed or healed.
Yeah. And sometimes when we really think, why am I feeling this way? We discover that we're feeling this way because there's an old behavior, there's an old thought pattern there, and it really doesn't apply to the situation at hand.
I think, a lot of times the first sort of door to open is to notice how you speak to yourself and how your thoughts respond to things, because there's usually a belief underneath that. And then underneath that is some sort of trauma or wound or experience, right? That has created that belief. And it might not be something that was spoken to you, because we feel the energy, especially as children, right?
Yes. And I say that in the book. I think parents of a certain generation, certainly of my parents' generation, really didn't. I mean, and it's not a mean-spirited thing, but they really didn't realize that children could pick up on the things that they weren't saying. So, Mom, are you okay? Yeah, I'm fine. When clearly the energy is not fine, can be a very confusing message.
I think back in our day, it was more like, how can we, put food on the table? Like, I grew up in a blue collar, family where my dad worked at Chrysler and paid the bills, and that's all he needed to do as a father. There was no emotions.
Right. Well,
there was no emotional, health or intelligent disgust.
Absolutely. And they weren't taught to deal with their emotions either. So,
and I think that's really important to say too. And I always say to my clients, it's really nobody's fault. We all are just given a toolbox, right? Of where we're at. And it's our choice to pick up the wrench and heal this one belief, or pick up the hammer, right? And so it's really something that you can't blame your parents or blame someone that's harmed you, because they're just operating from a place that they know of.
Right. And if you think about how we've evolved emotionally as emotional beings over the years, they were just in the very early parts of this, and the best part is watching the unit grow together. in emotionally, the family toolbox gets bigger and bigger, and it swings in both directions, to the younger generation and the older generation. So
I love it.
Yeah.
And I think people are really going to receive this well. Like, okay, I have all this pain. I'm not just going to take an ibuprofen. Let me look a little bit deeper into the mirror of where these things could be coming from.
And I think we go so hard as a society today, that downtime is seemed somehow something to be embarrassed
frowned upon.
Right. Yeah. Like our value is only in how productive we are. And I think that can really affect our creativity and definitely affects our health.
Yeah, because to be creative, you really have to be present and neutral, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
To be able to move that through you. And we're taught to be so busy, go, go, go.
Yeah. And then if we feel good in our bodies, the creativity is more likely to surface as well.
100%.
Yeah.
So how scary was this? To
Oh
be
my
able
God.
to put this out there.
So scary, honestly. And that's what I would say, to anyone looking to write memoir is just get started. You can edit it, tell your best friend, if anything happens to me, go into my computer and delete this document, don't let anybody see it till I'm
the
done.
advice you would give is just get started.
Just get started. Yeah. I think my biggest fear was that I was going to hurt someone close to me in telling this story. And obviously I wanted this to be healing for everyone, just the way that my mom said she wanted it to be healing. And I think that, when you start writing it, you might start to see other aspects of your stories that maybe you haven't delved into as much. And so I think that'll surface. Yeah.
Did you ever want to give up and be like, I'm not doing this anymore?
Ooh, nope.
Oh, I love it.
Nope. It was one thing I felt really sure that I wanted to do. And I'm really proud and grateful for all the support that I had in getting it done.
I love it. And we're really closing with some heavy questions here.
Yeah.
So did you ever feel like you had to process or relive some of the, the harder parts to write?
I did. And what I noticed is that when I experienced these things that happened in the book in my life, yes, when I experienced
It's like a person you're looking at.
I know. I can't stop. I'm just staring at it like it's going to give me the answers. I realized that I have spent the majority of my life in a fight or flight mode, in survival mode, with just a hypervigilance that really kept me from truly understanding who I am and why I am the way I am, because I felt like I was just shadowboxing all the time. And so to take the time to sit down and write with it is a way to accept it. To write through it is a way to accept it and to really experience it and go, well, no wonder, no wonder I felt this way when I was in relationships, or, no wonder I, spoiler alert, dropped out of high school. No wonder I was in survival mode. And so I think writing our stories is a way to not only connect with each other, but to deeply, deeply connect with ourselves.
Mm-hmm. And I'm sure your nervous system is much calmer, right? From going through this process and getting it on paper and doing the healing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, congratulations.
Thank
this
you.
is amazing. And we love that you're here. Right, Greasy?
Absolutely.
From the Peanut Gallery.
Go, girl.
So the book has dropped. It's launched.
Yes.
Tell us how to get a copy.
Okay. So
How to see you talk about it.
All right.
Yeah.
So you can get a copy of Sleep Like Starfish on barnesandnoble.com, on amazon.com. And for those local to Charlotte, I would love it if you would support Park Road Books and pick up your copy there.
And do you have an event?
I do have an event. So I have a book launch coming up at Park Road Books and Park Road Shopping Center here in Charlotte on the 30th, on October 30th at 6:30. And it's only from 6:30 to 7:30, so it's not super long, but I'm going to be in conversation with the WFAE's Sarah D'Elia, and we're going to talk about the book and about the craft of memoir, and then the book will be there available for purchase. And it should be a fun night.
Well, congratulations. I'm sure you pat yourself on the back. What a feat, right?
Yeah.
Well, everybody watching, get a copy of the book. If you live in Charlotte, come to Park Road Books.
Yeah.
One last question. Do you like Taylor Swift?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Mad respect for
Everyone
Taylor.
buy the book.
That was the right answer.
Thanks for tuning in on We Talk Raw. Thanks for coming,
Thanks for having
Shelly,
me.
Rachelle.
Yes.
I call you Shelly.
I love it. Thank you.